Good evening, Mr. Prime Minister, and welcome. And thank you for everybody coming out on a chilly pre-Thanksgiving evening. And Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much for coming to Little Rock. It's a pleasure and an honor to share the stage with you this evening. And to give you and the audience a preview of what I'd like to cover with you this evening is we'll cover how you got started in government in Pakistan, in your home country, some of the problems that you helped solve. We'll talk a little bit about the security situation in Pakistan and the surrounding area. We'll dig into the economic development efforts that you led in Pakistan, and we'll focus in particular on some of the investments that China has been making in your home country. And of course, we'll talk about your home country's relationship with the United States of America, if that's all right. So, as Dean Rutherford was talking about, you had a very successful career with Citibank. You were at the pinnacle of international and global banking. You had a nice, cushy office in New York City, and the phone rang one day, a private jet and all the accoutrements, and the phone rang one day. There had been a change in the government in your country, and you were being asked to come back and assist. So tell us about that. What happened after that phone call?
Oh, after the phone call. I was totally shaken, to put it mildly, because I had, the person who called me was General Musharraf. I had never met him and didn't know him or any of his senior generals because there was no reason to really. I had no interaction with them. I was busy in my own world, and as I reflected on what he said, and it was a sort of lengthy conversation, he explained how the economy of the country is in dire straits and he has taken over. I said that I know because I had seen it a few days before on CNN. And he said we need somebody who's global and professional to come and fix the economy and get the investment going and get the reform agenda going. So I said, well, I'm honored that you've called me, and let me discuss with my bosses just the fact that I should come even and see you. And if we come to some arrangement with my people, I'll come and see you. That doesn't mean, and he also said that doesn't mean I'm offering you any position yet, because we'll be talking to other people also. And it also didn't mean that I'm accepting anything at this stage. It was too premature. So I went and saw him and met all his colleagues, the other generals. And this was the first time in my career I had ever been to the army headquarters. There was no reason for me to. In Pakistan, a lot of people lobby in different halls or different powerful buildings, but I saw no reason to. So I didn't know any of them actually. Even General Musharraf, I had never seen him ever. But since he was running the country at the time, and I, as a good, loyal and strong citizen of Pakistan, I went and met him. And he said, as you know, our economy is in dire straits. I said, that's an understatement, but yes. Why did it reach that stage? I think it was a combination of many things. Not having the right team, I guess, not doing the reforms on time, staying, economic management today is not a domestic issue anymore. You live in a globalized world, whether you are in Little Rock or in Islamabad or anywhere else. There are linkages which create opportunities and challenges for you. It's not just restricted to the economy, but since we are talking about that part of my life. So I talked to them and I said, okay, let me go back to New York and talk to my bosses and see what we can do. And to make a long story short, my chairman at the time, our chairman, we had two chairmen because the bank had merged. Sandy Weil, who was the Travelers Group chairman, and John Reed, who was the Citibank chairman and remained the co-chairman for a couple of years after that. And I discussed with them, and they were all very excited. In fact, when I had met them actually even before I left, that this is what I'm doing. And they said, why don't you take the bank plane? It'll be... I said, this is kiss of death. He said, why? I said, if I land there with a company plane and, you know, with the press watching and all those other things, you'll have, before I even set foot in the country, there'll be editorials of lifestyle and what have you. So anyway, I took a commercial flight, and I was impressed by General Musharraf's sincerity in trying to get the economy back on its rails. And I did sensitize him to the enormity of the task. It was not as simple that you just bring in somebody and the world will change overnight. It doesn't work that way. And we didn't know each other at all, so there was a bit of trepidation on both sides. But anyway, John, I said, what I'll do is take a leave of absence if I'm offered the position for a year.
So you thought you might come back to banking?
Yeah, of course, because in my core is something called professionalism. It's not politics. So professionalism means you do the right thing, you are transparent, you have high standards of integrity, no matter what you do, and then you lead that life. Politics is a bit different, but you know, changes do happen as your life, as you navigate through the various challenges you face. So I accepted, and I took leave of absence, and I came as finance minister. Situation was much worse than I had imagined. And while people were, the good news was that the people working there in the finance area were very good. But obviously, they did not, the environment was such and the other challenges were such that we couldn't really get to where we wanted to go. So I'm assuming you'll ask that, so I'll say it anyway. My whole philosophy of changing a very troubled economy, a sick economy, to life can be described in 3 words. The sort of core principles I had from day one. And I said this publicly on many occasions, because every day you had some public event once you're in government, that we will liberalize, deregulate, and privatize. 3 words which had a lot of depth and meaning, and I explained each one. Liberalize because in a country like Pakistan, the involvement of government and red tape and policy making and rules and approvals and no objections and rubber stamps on there are 6 rubber stamps on any decision. And I don't know why we were so fond of rubber stamps, but now technology has moved on beyond that. So that was very important, to deregulate, because the more you regulate without knowing what you're doing, it becomes a culture. And it also gives rise to the potential of corruption.
Yes.
Because if you have to go every time and get 6 approvals, you can create more problems for yourself. Deregulation, because we were a product of the British Raj and a colonial sort of environment coming through, and the standard thing by government was control it, regulate it, never let the hundreds of flowers to bloom and the entrepreneurial spirits to come out to their full potential. Of course, they do come out in any environment. So that is very key. And deregulation, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, does not mean abdication by the government. People misunderstand the concept sometimes, no fault of theirs. Government's role is always there to oversee and be the overseer. But you don't have to be in everybody's office or in their decision-making process. Create the enabling environment which will let the entrepreneurs and the business to boom and move ahead and get the best results for themselves. And when somebody has incentive and they feel it's a fair environment and you have freedom to operate, that's when you get progress. That you can see here and in many other countries in the world. So that was and privatize, because you know, they are state-owned enterprises in the socialist system. They are private sector approaches to the to running an economy. But in my considered view, the future is to allow the entrepreneurial spirits of the people work. They produce the best results. There may be some industries or sectors where the investment required is so huge, or it is so complex the government may have to come in. But more and more that's not needed, in fact. So I always used to say it's not the business of government to be in business. It is the business of government to create an enabling environment for private sector and public sector if it exists, but private sector to grow and take the economy forward. And the government's role is to be the policy maker, the overseer, and making sure transparency is there, making sure governance is good, making sure nobody's taking an advantage of the government and its policies where we were not, where that was not the intention. And of course, fighting corruption and fighting. So in our culture in Pakistan, what I felt is that if you are in government and you have a lot of authority, which, as you know, the finance minister, which I was, is absolute power in terms of economic decisions. The finance minister is the most powerful minister in the cabinet. He chairs cabinet committee meetings. In addition to the prime minister, the only minister who chairs cabinet committee meetings is the finance minister. And those committees have authority to approve everything. So you are empowered. There was no question about it. So we went on this program, and the other thing I realized, which was a real shock coming from the private sector, was that we were under an IMF program, the International Monetary Fund. And if you want to lose your economic sovereignty, the best way is to get a program from the IMF. You are a victim of bureaucracy par excellence. You are my way or the highway. There's no discussion. That's the approach they have. And I'm exaggerating this point a bit just to show you. And the whole government and bureaucracy then becomes a victim of all this, and they try to manage this system. But it's not the fault of the IMF to behave this way. If we manage our economy well and we govern properly, there's no reason for you to go see the doctor and get the medicine, which is not very pleasant in terms of... so the reason was
you were able to restructure the debt of your country, though, and working with the IMF and the World Bank.
That was just one part of, but that was a major part, because the debt service payments were enough to take away the whole budget. Nothing left then and salaries. Nothing left for development and growth. We wanted to see the growth going. So I rescheduled the debt over several years, and the United States helped a lot. First I convinced the Treasury Department here, then I went to the IMF and World Bank, because the US is the major shareholder of these institutions, and they carry a lot of clout. And luckily the people we were dealing with in the State Department and Treasury understood what the plan was. I explained to them what we were trying to do: liberalize, deregulate, privatize, etc. And so we got away with it. The debt burden had to be pushed out, because ideally it should have been written off, but politically, for countries who are donors, they don't like to lend money and then write it off. So I came up with this very simple but innovative way of pushing the debt out 30 years, 10-year, 15-year grace period, reducing the interest to almost nothing. Now, those of you who know present value accounting will easily guess what I'm leading to. If that meant that you pay back, you get a 30-40% haircut if you follow this formula. So it wasn't something ultra complex, but that's what...
And it gave time to the economy to be able to grow, to be able to service the debt.
That is the key point I was absolutely coming to, that gave me the space to then implement other reforms and try to get growth. Because nothing works if you don't get economic growth.
Right.
Even a developed country like the United States, if your growth slows down or disappears, you will see the pressure building in the economy and the people. So we wanted growth, and then for the 8 years, we had 6 to 8% real growth in real terms, which got us to doubling the size of the economy in about 6 to 8 years if you compound all this. And the best gift you can give to a nation or the people is to grow the economy. Now, there are issues when you have growth. You have to try to get equitable growth. You don't want the rich just to get richer and the poor get poorer. So that rebalancing also has to be created, and there are many techniques of doing that.
And how did the privatization work with respect to equality and spreading the assets?
Yes, sir. Very good question. So we decided a list and announced it. All this has to be transparent, that these are the sectors we think the government should be out of this business. And we had to do it because in Pakistan, I guess the culture is such, if you sell a state asset, everybody thinks you're selling it to your cousin or your uncle, and it's not, maybe in the past may not have been transparent, although I didn't check each transaction. But we wanted in our case to do something different. So we were issuing licenses, new licenses for something in my pocket. This is called a cellular phone. We had 1.5 network or 2, under-invested, old technology, and this is one of the best engines of growth because it is empowerment, it is connectivity, it is so many things. I don't want to get into this, I'll be speaking for half an hour. But so I said, what do we do? And you could see the press building up in a very negative way on privatization. The unions were not happy. The civil society said, will they give it to their uncle, cousin, or brother? So I said, okay, what we are going to do, we wanted to give 3 new licenses for cell phones. So we did something which the government had never done. People thought I'm going wacko, but no, it worked. We hired the ballroom of the local Marriott hotel. That was the only hotel in Islamabad which had a big ballroom. And I told our people that we will auction new licenses for... first I asked, what did we get for the old licenses, which was before our time? And the people I asked, senior bureaucrats who had the history, they just looked down. I said, well, tell me, why are you so shy? He said, nothing, sir. We allotted them. I said, but did the government get, because bandwidth is a scarce resource. It's not an unlimited resource. I said, we must get something for it. And we should do it transparently. So what I decided is, first of all, in our country and in many countries, when you bid for a government property being sold, a lot of people come in with fake bids and just to muddy the waters and all that. So first pre-qualify the buyers, because if you sell your phone system to somebody who doesn't know how to operate it, you will get the flack. So we had to do some sort of pre-qualification that you had the financial and technical resources to run a franchise like that. So we got the best experts to do that, outsourced it, not the government doing it. And secondly, we said to enter the auction, you must put at the door, bring a cashier's check of $10 million. Because this license is worth a lot. If you don't even have $10 million to put as a deposit, you are just a letterhead company. You know what a letterhead company is?
Yes.
You go to a printer, say ABC Enterprises, and nice logo. There's nothing behind it. So I wanted to avoid all that. And I told the state television company to live show to the nation how we are auctioning these licenses. And by the way, next day the press was quiet because we showed it on TV live. We got 350, I forget the exact number, $1 million per license, or maybe slightly less, but it was big money. And it was shown to the whole country, people bidding, doing that. It wasn't my uncle or cousin, because that's the standard thing. And you have to fight these things because if you want change for your country. So we did all that out-of-the-box stuff and we succeeded. Of course, coupled with this was a lot of economic growth coming. So the phone system, we created thousands of jobs. And then the private sector comes in because you have to buy the phones, you have to buy the chips, you have built towers all over the country. You have, in our country, even the towers, you have to have security there. So one guy, 3 people shifts around the clock. All these jobs were created. And people had connectivity. It was amazing. It was like giving, sweets to everybody every day because they could talk to each other, and it led to more economic growth because it's opportunity. And
so things were going fairly well. You had restructured the debt. The economy was growing. You were bringing transparency into the government and trying to tamp down corruption. And then something happened that brought the attention of the world to your part of the world, 9/11.
Oh, yes.
And the relationship between your country and our country, my country, changed a bit.
Absolutely.
There was that famous phone call from Colin Powell to the president, basically saying either you're with us or you're against us.
Yes, absolutely. I remember that very well.
And you guys said you were with us.
Yes, because obviously we are opposed to extremism and terrorism. And the call did come, and I think it was not just really the US, the world wanted US being an important player, of course, and as you know, the Pakistan-US relationship is a very complex relationship. We are the most sanctioned country. We were, and I think we may still be, a sanctioned ally of the United States and the most allied ally of the United States at the same time. So we are member of, and we are a non-NATO ally, we were member of CENTO, going back to the Dulles era, and every treaty we signed, and then at the same time we were sanctioned because of, there were reasons on both sides, which I need not go into at this point, but it was a complex relationship. So I was in government, so when this happened, of course, Colin Powell and Tony Blair, who was sort of an interlocutor too, because Britain, it was felt that they understood Pakistan also quite well. So they were regular visitors and coming, and we, no country in their right mind would ever say that we are encouraging terrorism and extremism, because if that happens, it hurts the fabric of the country. And so you have to fight it, you have to find ways. But the problem in the world, preempting maybe your question, we don't spend enough time on root causes of.
Yes, I wanted to talk about that. And in particular, many people say that bombs, bullets, and bayonets are not the answer to the root cause of the problem, and that you have to attack the root causes of deprivation and helplessness and lack of a well-rounded education, so that young minds are infected with thoughts that lead to terrorism. And within your country, let's focus on the education system for a while and its role in changing the country and moving away from a ground from which terrorism might grow. How do you go about looking at your educational system? Because many have said that it's one of the problems.
Yes. I think back to what you alluded to, and you've read the book too, I guess. I talk about the deprivation issue. I believe that terrorism and extremism stems from deprivation, which I then define in the book, which is lack of income, lack of justice, lack of human rights, lack of resolution of disputes. It's a very holistic way of looking at it, and it is not a policing issue. Terrorism cannot be solved just by policing. You will have 20 more. It's like shoots growing. 20 more. Every time you take out one, there are 20 more. So we have to understand why people behave this way. Why are they willing to kill themselves? What is motivating them, and what can we do to make life better? So that's the way we have to look at it. And in terms of what you are alluding to as to why Pakistan has this or what we can do about it, I think it's a very complex issue. This really, in Pakistan, the growth of extremism and terrorism happened after the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. When they walked in, we were part of a coalition, United States, ourselves, and many other countries, to oppose that. And it was decided that rather than send uniformed forces into Afghanistan to fight the Russian army, Soviet army actually at that time, this predates Russia coming into it on its own. We will send volunteers. So there was a movement to recruit people from within Pakistan and from the rest of the Muslim world, and package it as a religious war of this communist nation coming and attacking a brotherly Muslim country like Pakistan, like Afghanistan. Obviously, that could. There were theories that maybe they wanted access to the warm waters of the Arabian Sea. That would involve Pakistan and all sorts of things. There may be some truth in it too, but that's what happened. So volunteers from people who were students, people who were working, they signed up, they went to fight for Afghanistan. Now, as we have seen, history will tell us it's happening even now, today, where we get people, we help people to defend themselves and train them to defend themselves against forces who are trying to disrupt. The entry strategy is worked out with some thought, but there's no exit strategy in these conflicts. And that is why we are seeing problems way beyond Pakistan. You look at the whole Middle East area now, Syria, Iraq, Libya, etc. We can talk about all these too, because I have points of view on most things, and these included. But back to Afghanistan. So we sent these people. They were coming from the Middle East, from Saudi Arabia, from the Gulf, from this, that, and Pakistan. Recruiting was going on, encouraged by the United States, by Pakistan, by everybody. They were all party to this. So if you hear otherwise, please bring the person to me and I will remind them what we discussed. So that being the case, the Soviet forces had a tough time and they finally had to withdraw, if you remember. So the Taliban, as it was called, Taliban means student, which means young fighters. They did an effective job in containing the thing. Now, once that happened, there was no strategy to rebuild Afghanistan. This we see in many conflicts, that you get rid of the aggressor, but you don't do anything about the debris which is left behind.
There seems to be an aversion to nation building after nations are
attacked, and the people, also the people who go and fight for them, they have then nobody takes care of them. We're all to blame. So these young kids who are now coming back to normal life, we don't do enough to retread them, to package them, to mold their thinking into that battle is over. Now you come and learn a skill and earn a job, get a job and get back into normal life. We just abandoned them. And that's how a lot of these terrorist groups, in hindsight, and we are all to blame, were created. Because they felt used and suddenly they are abandoned. And then, of course, as you know, in every society there are negative feelings. There are people who exploit these things. The other issue, which allow me to move a little to what I call reform by regime change, that became very popular. That was the next phase after the sending people to contain, say, the Soviets in this case, on Afghanistan, etc. So we said, okay, you take, country, you don't like the leader, you don't like the way it's run, and there are good reasons probably for that. So let's eliminate him or her. So we eliminate the leader. And then the country implodes because there are regional factors. Take Libya as a great example. So the world decided that Colonel Gaddafi has to go. For whatever reasons, I won't get into them. And so he was eliminated. NATO forces actually went and killed him, And if you see the NATO, allow me to be blunt.
Well, with the support of the Arab League, asking the West to come in.
Of course. Right. But NATO was used, the Arab League was part of the thing, absolutely. But I think NATO should have said no. Because to kill a leader of a country, even if you despise him, he's bad, evil, you don't send NATO fighter planes shooting. Now, at that time, we all said, gee, maybe this is the right thing. We meaning the world.
Not us, but the world. When that happened, what happens after that? The state implodes, the country implodes, factions take over, there is no writ of government, and the country becomes a terrorist haven because all these elements come there. One, they are disenfranchised. Two, they then use this as a base. And I don't want to comment on any one leader, because that's really not the purpose of this discussion. But to tell you how, by removing the fabric without much thought or leadership or this sort of governance system in that country, good or bad, we create a vacuum. And these situations are exactly what the people who want to create trouble are looking for. They are hoping that the system will react that way. You look at Levant, Syria, Iraq, what's going on? We can discuss each one of them in detail, but that's not really, I don't think we have the time. But these, it's very simple to say, we're going to eliminate this or we're going to do that, but we must also be conscious as to what the after effects will be.
Yes.
And now we have created, now when the fabric of the state collapses, terrorism, extremism gets a power boost like you've never seen. Mm-hmm. And this is happening as we speak, right in front of us. And we are trying. The last point I would make on extremism, terrorism, is that it is not a policing issue. You will never solve extremism and terrorism by just killing everybody. You will solve it by approaching the issue differently, which is winning the hearts and minds of the people. It's very difficult to do. It's a very tough recipe, which I'm just giving. But that is the ultimate way to retread these people back into a normal life. And that's where we collectively as the world have failed. And we need to do more to get this issue taken care of. And regime change is the start of the problem, not the start of the solution. So we have to be very careful how we sit and decide whether certain country is no. And there are probably very bad leaders there. No, I don't want to, probably. I don't want to get into that. But the way to tackle that, we have to come up with a smarter way, and we can discuss those too.
So we have a new president in our country who's getting ready to take office, and if you were in his office, we'll give him a couple of weeks to get used to the job. Towards the middle of February.
I think he's already on it without even...
Yeah,
which is good.
And you were behind closed doors with him, and he asked you to speak very frankly about specific things that the United States could do to try to turn the tide on terrorism in our world. What would your advice be to the president?
Well, first of all, I would tell him that get a coalition of countries to do it. Don't just proceed as a US policy only. US has many friends and admirers, but there are also many adversaries, right? Because of whatever reasons. So if it's done collectively with a group of countries, including from all faiths, so it's not seen as a we-they, that's step number one. And I think most people, I have a lot of friends in the US administration, and once in a while I talk to them, they would welcome that. Why should US be the only sort of country which is criticized by all this other side? It has to be collective. If it's for the betterment of the world, we should get a coalition of the world together, including Islamic countries too, and others who all want peace and harmony. And that will reduce the pressure on the US, number one. Europe should play its part. Nothing today, if you ask me what in the world worries you, is the division between the major powers of the world. There was always tension, they have different agendas, they have different ideologies, but on such issues we should bring them together. It's very interesting. If we can, in the fight against extremism and terrorism, if we can get Russia, United States, of course, United States, Russia, China, Europe, all on one page. It may not be easy,
your firepower gets much more enhanced. Today, in the world, the P5, or the P3 really, or P4 as you call it, P4 and P5. P5 means the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, which are US, of course, Russia, China, France and Britain. Europe's role is less today, but it's good to have them on board. So if we can bring them together, then the UN actually in all major crises in the recent past has been MIA, missing in action. You look at the migrant crisis in Europe, huge situation. You never saw UN move one way or the other. It was countries moving.
Let me be very direct, because nations know how to send in their militaries to do certain things. But we've talked about how policing, to use a more polite word,
Yes.
or an invasion, to use a more direct word, is probably not the only way to address the problem.
No.
So putting aside the military efforts, what are the specific things that you would recommend that the president consider building a coalition around? I mean, what should be done?
The first thing the president should consider is building the right coalition.
Okay.
Going it alone, I, as a friend of the United States, would never advise them to do, ever. Because the backfire will come all on the US, and you're doing it for the cause of the world. It's not just because of the US. So, and Russia must be on the table, China must be on the table, and of course 1 or 2 European powers, and then 1 or 2 Muslim countries. They have to be very much there, so that it's a collective effort. And that is that solves most of this problem. So it's not America's war against a refugee camp in Timbuktu or wherever it is, but it is the world. Sensible people in the world want to fight extremism and terrorism, and they should be together. If we don't do that, it gives the other countries who are not on the table an opportunity to create problems for us, and that will happen. So it is the job of leadership, Mr. Trump, President Trump, to engage with the leaders of other countries. And he already has a good relationship with Putin. You see, whether you like it or not, Russia is a big power, China is a big power. You got to find ways of dealing with each other, and they have to find a way to deal with the United States and Europe. And what will be the end result? The end result will be good for everybody, humanity. Nobody will compromise their positions. Nobody will give territory to anybody. Nobody will increase or help increase the sphere of influence of any other major power. But peace is what is needed. And that we should do before the problem arises. Usually we are reacting, as you see. We are not preempting. And there the UN can play a part. And UN was always missing in action. Even in the migrant situation where people were being killed, crossing borders, there were no camps, they were not there. That is not the weakness of the UN alone. That is a failure on part of the 5 major powers who run the UN, the permanent members of the Security Council. They should have been on the front foot and empower the Secretary General, support him or her, as in now him, to come up with a solution which appears to be, you see, the optics of the situation are as important as the facts. It should be seen as a collaborative effort to help the world and get rid of those elements who are creating trouble. If a particular country does it, then they become the target and we lose the battle. We may win the battle, but we lose the war. So that's where leadership comes in. And I think that if President Trump can focus on that, it'll be now they say, I read in the press, that he knows Putin well. If that is true, he should use that card to and get the Chinese in and get the Europeans, of course, they should be in. And yes, there was Crimea, yes, there are many things on all sides which the other side doesn't like. We can get into that debate ad nauseum and nothing will happen. So leadership means to choose the right issues and to choose them in a sequence and in a way which is participative also. And gone are the days where one can order the whole world, you will do this, I would love to do that, but it doesn't get traction. People will say yes, and by the time they get into their car on the way home, they've decided something else. So President Trump should focus on these 3 or 4 leaders and really get to work with them, and he can be a game changer because he's an entrepreneur. He doesn't have baggage. He can fix things, and I really feel this is a golden opportunity because every day a life is lost anywhere in the world, irrespective of whether we like the country, we don't. These are human beings, and they matter. So that should be the thing. Secondly, of course, for Mr. Trump, or President Trump, sorry, would be healing the wounds domestically. Because after an election, you have different feelings, and I'm sure he'll do that. That now he's the leader of the United States and leader of the free world, but he's certainly leader of the United States. So he represents all factions and all people. So some healing, some touch, some humane stuff coming would be very good. And people like strong leaders. People like leaders who are active and trying to do the right thing, and this then will spread globally. So some of the problems which you started with, terrorism, extremism, is it's item number 1 on the agenda of many countries, and that's what we should. President Trump could be the game changer here. I really feel. He doesn't have baggage. He's not hostage to anything. He can do the right thing.
He came from the private sector,
Absolutely.
as did
Absolutely. That's why I'm excited.
Yeah. Let me shift back a little bit closer to home, to Pakistan, and the relationship with India.
Yes.
And there has been conflict in the Kashmir region for quite some time with the line of control, and lives have been lost as recently as this weekend. You're both admitted nuclear powers. There was a submarine, an Indian submarine apparently was in Pakistani waters.
Till we saw it and we told them go away, otherwise we pressed the button.
And the Navy pushed it away.
Done very maturely, I must say.
Yeah, and Pakistan has bought the latest attack helicopters from China, and there just seems to be a lot of muscle flexing in this region. Should we be concerned?
Yeah.
Where's this going?
Just the last point first. The attack helicopters are defensive. You don't go into battle with helicopters these days. You do, but that's after you've captured the territory, etc. And Chinese.
I'm not making an accusation.
No, it's not.
It's just that there's a lot of
It's a defensive weapon.
Yeah, it's a lot of activity. Should we be concerned?
Yeah. I think Pakistan, first of all, for countries in the world, especially in the area we live in, buying stuff to improve our defensive capability is when you take oath as Prime Minister or President of the country, it is your duty to make sure you have enough funds allocated for that, because we live in a very tense environment. And I do believe one thing: peace can only be achieved with strength, not weakness. If you don't have enough capability to defend yourself, and you're negotiating or you're in a situation where 2 countries have differences, if there's weakness on one side and strength on the other, it will create more problems than it will solve. So the other thing on India-Pakistan, very good question. I don't want to go into the history because most people would know, but just to say that the current escalation of tension is because of trouble in Kashmir. Since Mr. Modi's arrival, Mr. Modi is the Prime Minister of India. He was elected, and we welcome that he's sitting there. But he has some baggage. And I'll be frank. You allow me to be frank? Yeah. So he has some baggage. In his time, in Gujarat, his state, Muslims were butchered under his watch. Now, that is point number 1. Point number 2 is that when I was Prime Minister, so I remember this very well, a train of Pakistanis visiting India, we have a train service, the train was stopped in the middle of nowhere, the doors sealed, and the train was burnt with all people inside. Everybody was burnt alive. Now, when I tell people that, they say, really? Oh, I said, just Google, you'll find. I was in office, so I called Mr. Manmohan Singh, was the Prime Minister. Mr. Modi was Chief Minister of Gujarat, the state where this happened. So I said, Mr. Prime Minister, this is really a despicable act, and we are sitting in the 21st century. You stopped the train, locked the doors, burnt women, children, everybody died. And people, when I say this, they say, is it true? I said, just go and check it out. And all Mr. Manmohan Singh told me, I'll look into it. I said, Mr. Prime Minister, so many lives have been lost yesterday. You're just looking into it. You should be telling me what you've done already. I mean, I said it more diplomatically, but so anyway, coming to the current situation in Kashmir, there are UN Security Council resolutions when Kashmir had conflict for the first time, saying that immediately as peace is restored, we will have a referendum. The people will decide whether they want to go stay with Pakistan or go with India. Because, you know, there was when the British were leaving, they had this thing that majority, the principle was that majority where Muslims are there will go, and if it's contiguous, obviously you can't go. You can't have enclaves everywhere. You could, but it would not be practical. But in contiguous areas, if there's Muslim majority population, that comes to Pakistan. And if they are majority non-Muslim, they go to India. So those resolutions are there that a referendum will be held, like Brexit. Hopefully the results will be more predictable. And that has never been done. So that's the sore point, which has been, it's a resolution of the UN Security Council, passed by everybody, the permanent members, etc. So this is some of the baggage. The good news is that in the time of Prime Minister Bajpayee, who was from the BJP, the same party, not Mr. Modi's party, but similar to Mr. Modi's party, sort of ultra-right, slightly extremist view and anti-Muslim sort of DNA. But Mr. Bajpayee came to Pakistan and I was in the room. I was just finance minister then. For some reason I was there. And we came very close to a deal on Kashmir. He agreed, we agreed. And the interlocutors were the British. British people or government, and they understand Pakistan a lot because obviously we were a colony of Britain, so they know the nuances, they know all the undercurrents and what have you. So they helped, and United States, of course, we kept them in the loop and they were very supportive. They supported it all the way. Mr. Bajpayee, who I think will go down in history as one of the great leaders of India, he's very unwell. He made and I was in the room, he said, look, we won't implement or announce anything till after my re-election. The election was coming because he comes from an ultra-right, very ultra-right party who normally would not support this, but he saw the light. But he says, as soon as the election is held, and if I am still Prime Minister, we will implement it. And he's a sincere man who wouldn't say it if he... Unfortunately, they lost the election. And Congress came in, which is a milder party. But they didn't have strong leadership who was willing to stick their neck out domestically. And with the ultra-right party now in opposition, they would exploit that. So we are stalled again. As regards buying helicopters, our defense budget is peanuts compared to India. Our defense expenditure is a rounding error when compared to India. For us, it's a lot of money, but in the overall scheme of things. And we have no desire to fight a war with anybody, leave alone India. We must have enough capability, though, to defend ourselves. So our whole defense strategy is, if they get more weapons, which they get every day, and sophisticate, they're buying Russian weapons, French, US, everything. We must have a deterrent capability, that's all. So we're not bullied and pushed around. And so there's helicopters, and whatever we have, this is routine stuff. Mostly these are they are gunships, but they are used against terrorists, and they are used in natural calamities and disasters to evacuate people. And they are not the most modern in technology, I might add. Compared to, say, US helicopters, which we used to have, they were very advanced. So that's the real issue. The need for peace between India and Pakistan is critical. The need to solve the Kashmir issue is critical. And it will only happen when there are strong leaders on both sides. If you have one government very weak and one very strong, you will never solve it.
Which leads me to my last question before we take some questions from the audience.
Yes.
And you probably know where I'm coming from on this, from the grin. Under what circumstances would you consider getting involved in politics in your country again?
No, I'm not a politician. I went in, I'll tell you why I went in, because the country was bankrupt. Really. We had negative reserves. I'm embarrassed to tell you that, but it's well known. We had more payables than money in the bank. And that was no way for a sovereign country, a nuclear power, to live. So it was not difficult to convince me. Although I left a very good career in Citibank, and as you know, we are paid very well in banking. We still are. I gave up a huge six-figure number every year. But money is not everything. If you get an opportunity to serve your country and your motherland, and you do it not for money, you do it because history will regard you, and people judge what happened, and the results were there. From anemic growth of 2%, 3%, 4%, we, as I said, doubled our GDP. We got rid of the IMF. Never happened. The happiest day, one of the happy days in my career as Prime Minister was when I went to Parliament and told them, today I have an important announcement to make. They said, oh, what is he doing? Is he leaving? Is he what? I said, before coming to the Parliament, I instructed our central bank to remit this much money to the IMF today, value today, and repay our entire debt to the fund. And then I said, today Pakistan has regained economic sovereignty. This is the only time the opposition clapped in my 4 years. Usually they booed us. But they couldn't help doing this, sort of half-hearted clap, but clap was there. Yeah. They bang the desks, that's the way they do it. So the point is, one must never, the graveyards of the world are full of indispensable people. Nobody's indispensable. And once you move on, give others a chance. I think that's the sign of greatness. To say that I go back, I was never a politician, I don't probably want to be, but I helped my country and we made a big difference. And governance, fighting corruption, economy, etc., all improved. But there are many other people who should come through a normal process of elections and democratic process. What we did was an anomaly. It worked, but it could have also failed. But it worked because there were sincere people on all sides trying to do the right thing. Having said that, I think the solution for Pakistan is a democracy, a democratic government. But in my book, as you will see the last chapter, I have strongly advocated a presidential form of government. Why? If you'll give me 2 minutes, I can. The reason is, in a parliamentary form of government, the cabinet and the key cabinet is your first line of defense or the last line, depending how you look at it. It should have, in ministries, area experts running the ministry. In our case, the criteria is very different. It's, coalitions being responsive to, okay, we'll give you this ministry, we'll give you that, and it may have nothing to do with qualifications. What Pakistan needs, like many other countries, so if you're getting a finance minister, you must get the best finance person you can find. If you want an education minister, you find an educationist, not a chap who's not even a BA or maybe he has a false degree or whatever. And they are running education because their objective is not educating people. The health ministry should have, and we have such people in the country, should be the health expert. So in a presidential system, the president has the authority to appoint the cabinet. The parliament, if you are a member of parliament, you legislate and you have oversight on the government. And that will get stronger because you get the MPs there. And there are examples of countries, Indonesia, Korea these days has issues, but the system is presidential. And many countries in the world, developing countries, have presidential systems. The idea is to put the best talent against the opportunity. And if we don't do that, then everybody will become an MP to try to be a minister and try to enrich themselves. I'm not saying all will do that, but some will do that. So to get the nation moving forward, you must get the best people in the country in that field and put them there, transparently. Nobody's cousin, uncle, dad should say, oh, our family has been in politics for 50 years, so my son should be a minister. This was my biggest challenge, people coming and saying, make my brother or make me the minister of so-and-so. I said, what do you know about mining and energy? He said, nothing, but I want to be minister. I don't want to say describe the rest of the conversation. You can imagine. I was appalled, but that's the true fact. So we have to get a system of governance where we put the best talent there, have very strong check and balance, and ruthless transparency. Ruthless. Then we'll see progress, then we'll see action, then we'll see. And I've said that now in black and white, last chapter, the way forward. It gives a little roadmap of how to do it.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's thank the Prime Minister for being with us this evening. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
We do have time for maybe one or two quick questions, and so if we get our hands up, we can get a question. We have Khalid, a student.
Yes, my name is Khalid, and I'm a second-year student.
Where are you from, sir?
I'm from Afghanistan. Prime Minister, thank you for coming to Little Rock. My question is, from the Taliban inception in 1996 until September 8, 2001, Pakistan was, as a government, was supporting the Taliban movement and had one of the 3 countries that recognized Taliban had a diplomatic relationship with Taliban. September 10, things changed. That's 2001. And Pakistan changed the course and now recognized Taliban as a terrorist state and radical. So how would you explain that to the normal, common person?
I'll explain it to a smart person like you, and then if you buy it, then I hope others will buy it too. No. As I mentioned earlier, that we joined a coalition to support the Afghan government and people to fight Soviet expansionism and their whole plan to come, I think, plan was to come to the warm waters of the Arabian Sea. And the US helped us. They were part of the coalition, of course, a leading part, and many other countries were involved. However, now Taliban is, of course, from an organization which is fighting for freedom of its country to a terrorist organization where they are attacking us, they are attacking your government, the same people on the border is porous, so the person who's in Peshawar today could be in Kabul tomorrow, and they can be coming. And other factors, other countries have come in who are seeing this sort of disequilibrium or this group of people, and they're exploiting it to meet their own needs. Other countries have come in to use the Taliban to create trouble for Pakistan. Other powers are also doing the same in Afghanistan. And this is what's happening. And the people mostly don't know who's behind it. So in Pakistan's case, we feel very good about what support we gave to Afghanistan over the last decade. We lost lives, we shed blood, we opened our homes to them. Millions of refugees came in to Pakistan. It created a lot of people were opposed to it because, there were when you have such mass migration, first of all, the slums of our big cities expanded dramatically. Secondly, these people needed the UN aid, and all that was not enough for them to survive. So they took jobs and displaced the local people. We said, no, this is an extraordinary situation. Many, as rightly expected, married locally, settled locally, they don't want to go back. Not everybody's a terrorist. They are good people too. So we opened our hearts to them. And I think this was our duty. It was not our favor. And we will do it, God forbid, if it's needed again, it will be done again. However, now, those very Taliban are attacking our establishment because they are encouraged by other powers who have scores to settle with us, or whatever the reason. And so now, dealing with Taliban, for us, is today there are explosions taking place in Pakistan directly linked to them. The border is porous, people are going back and forth. We have evidence, we have shared it with your government, we have shared it with our friendly countries too. So we will have to collectively do it, because this is also a threat to your government. In fact, there are attacks taking place in Kabul and other cities of Afghanistan, which doesn't make anybody happy. I personally, when I was Prime Minister, no Pakistani Prime Minister in the history of our bilateral relations has made so many visits to Kabul as I did. And this was not for sightseeing or ceremonial visits. I used to go spend hours with President Karzai and many other colleagues in his government, Hidayat Amin Arsala at that time, many others. And now you have an elected coalition government. I'm not there, so I can't give you the latest, but I do keep in touch with. I met Mr. Ashraf Ghani a few months ago. We are good friends, so we meet one-on-one. Again, trying to, although I'm not in government, trying to see how we can build bridges and reduce the trust deficit, or improve the trust deficit and reduce this feeling of what are we doing and why are we not doing. To me, the Afghanistan-Pakistan relationship, above any other relationship for your country and ours, if we get it right, the dividend will be huge for both. No other country can match that dividend and returns of the relationship. Unfortunately, there are forces at work which don't want that to happen. But I think better sense will prevail. Every time there's an explosion in Afghanistan, they try to put the blame on people from our side. When we have something, we try to. So it's deteriorated the relationship a little bit. But I think both countries need each other, and both should show. I'm not involved day to day, so forgive me for not getting into. I have some idea, but I don't want to spend time on it, except to say that both countries should show maturity and learn to live with each other. Afghanistan is landlocked. No matter what plans our adversaries have to change the geography of the region, it won't change. All transit, it comes through Iran and Pakistan. And there's a lot of affinity of the Pakhtun population, particularly with Pakistan. And there are also people who don't agree with it. Then there's the Panshiris, the Hazaras, etc. Hazaras are also very good people. The Panshiris have their own view. I don't know your origin or your ethnic background, but that doesn't matter. You're an Afghan, and that's more important to me. So these three subgroups have their own internal challenges also, which I think when you have challenges internally, there are forces at work in every country which will try to exploit them. So I think all of us, Pakistan included, we should show more leadership, more openness, and see how we can work together. I believe, maybe I'm biased because of my background, and I've said this publicly in Kabul many, many times, that the economic integration of the two countries is critical to sustainable peace and growth going forward. And I worked hard to achieve that, as you know. The roads, I went in fact with President Karzai to open the road which we built from Torkham to Jalalabad. And there are many other things we did, and we can do much more. But it takes two to tango. And I'm quite confident that in time, better sense will prevail. Our friendly countries also have recognized this, and they are trying to sort of get things together. Also, domestically, like any country, you have a democracy, and you have internal divisions within your government, which are not below the carpet, they are out in the open. So that will also help. As a friend of Afghanistan, the differences can continue, but they must agree on 3 or 4 key things and get it moving as a one country. Otherwise, you know, when you're pulling in different directions, as I said, as a friend of Afghanistan, that will delay things, and you will be looking for more issues like what we are looking at today rather than positive things we can do together. Thank you.
I know that there's many more questions. I do hope that you come up after the event and chat with the Prime Minister while he signs a copy of his new book. He won't hawk it, so I will. It's over here for sale if you'd like to continue this conversation. Jerry, Mr. Prime Minister, thank you so much for visiting with us, and thank all of you for coming out. Thanks again.